This podcast may contain explicit language. What's in the box? 7 is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And tonight for our 280th episode, we discuss 7 from 1995, celebrating its 30th anniversary. Directed by David Fincher, written by Andrew Kevin Walker, cinematography by Darius Kanji, music by Howard Shore. Starring Brad Pitt as David Mills, Morgan Freeman as William Somerset, Gwyneth Paltrow as Tracy Mills, Richard Roundtree as Martin Talbot, R. Lee Ermey as the police captain, apparently he doesn't deserve his own name, John C. McGinley as California, and Kevin Spacey as John Doe. Background on the movie: 7 was released on September 22nd, 1995. On a budget of $33 to $34 million, the film would gross $327 million worldwide, finishing as the #1 film of the year worldwide for 1995. 7 received mostly positive reviews at the time and would be nominated for 1 Academy Award for, take a guess?
Screenplay.
Art or set design.
Yeah, production design.
No. Best Film Editing.
Editing.
Okay.
See, I use these as a way of just testing the waters to see if you guys actually read the notes that I send in advance, but all right.
No. It's not bad enough I have to listen to you during the show.
In the years since its release, 7 has grown in esteem, receiving general critical praise and being described by the BFI, or British Film Institute, as a groundbreaking thriller. A 2014 poll by The Hollywood Reporter ranked 7 the 85th best film of all time. In audience-voted polls, 7 has been listed at number 15 in 2006, 30, and 37 in 2023 on lists of the greatest films conducted by the publications Total Film and Empire. Empire's 2008 poll of raters, Hollywood actors, and key film critics included 7 at number 134 on its list of the 500 greatest movies of all time, while Time Out's 2022 staff poll ranked it at number 87. It was recognized earlier this year by the Cinema Legacy poll at number 105. In fact, I have to issue a small correction for what was last week an error on my part. I did not realize at the time that Raging Bull and 7 had actually tied, and so instead of it being number 106, it's actually tied at 105 with Raging Bull. The film's ending has been described as one of the most shocking and unforgettable plot twists in cinematic history. Pitt's line, "What's in the box?" as he asks Somerset to confirm the contents of Doe's box, has become iconic and is used in popular culture and internet memes. Walker credited the twist as one of the primary reasons for 7's success. Although it is only implied that Tracy's head is in the box, Fincher recalled an encounter with a woman who believed she had seen the contents of the box. Fincher believed that leaving the implication to the audience's imagination had been more effective than showing a special effect. Paltrow wore a replica box over her head as her Halloween costume in 2017. Probably the most, what would you call it? Ability to laugh at oneself that she's ever done, outside of maybe the few times that she's been willing to go on like Colbert and make fun of herself for Goop.
Well, just naming your company Goop.
She did just do the Coldplay concert CEO, what the astrological, whatever the CEO was. That's making some pretty good fun of yourself too, I think.
I suppose. But you have to have some additional context to understand why.
Yeah.
Regardless, 7 currently holds an 84% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 65 score on Metacritic, and a 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Kind of a real deviation there between the Metacritic and the Letterboxd scores, which usually aren't quite so different, but regardless. So, of course, he never misses an opportunity to come in before we actually introduce him. It is our guest for the evening. We can't do this by ourselves, so we welcome back our returning celebrity guest, co-host of the War Starts at Midnight podcast, making his now 11th appearance on the show to date. Please welcome back Peterson W. Hill.
So I was counting, Tom, with the pre-stuff you sent. I think this is my 10th.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
Yeah, maybe I was miscounting, but
Gone Girl, Parasite, Fight Club, Ben-Hur, Up in the Air, The Shop Around the Corner, La Dolce Vita, The Social Network Revisit, Peter Panchali. I think there's one more in there. And apparently I'm missing it from my list here, but I can certainly search it quick.
Call yourself innocent? Innocent? Missing a movie? You find that innocent?
Of course, now you got me scrambling.
I was on the Oscars episode, but that wasn't really an episode. That was just a
Oh, that's right. That's the missing one, but I do count those for overall.
Got it. Content.
Yep. So, yes, Gone Girl, Parasite, Fight Club, Ben-Hur, Up in the Air, The Shop Around the Corner, La Dolce Vita, The Social Network Revisit, Peter Panchali, this one now. And I gotta definitely remember that the Oscars post-reaction episodes count towards episode totals. But otherwise, you would have been correct. So it's the regular 10th episode, but 11th overall.
In the spirit of
Anyway.
America today, I'm right.
Okay. And Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Anyway. It is definitely not lost on me as I bring that up that we're operating in a world right now where we have a lot of civil unrest in America. And we're talking about a film specifically about a vindictive serial killer who is trying to get attention for his message through ridiculous and performative acts of violence. So, yeah, let that one sink in as to cultural appropriateness of the moment.
It did feel much more prescient watching it this time in a way that I don't know if I'd ever really felt before. And I've seen this 20 times.
You mean political violence and people showing out their victims was not as prescient to the moment of 1995 when this came out?
The things we worried about in the 90s are substantially different.
Yes, Y2K.
You could release something like Dangerous Minds in 1995 and not immediately people think this is incredibly problematic. Now you release Dangerous Minds and you're sentenced to Guantanamo for 10 years.
Can you imagine something like Indecent Proposal now?
Hell yeah, I could. Get it back. The trashy sex thrillers of the 90s and 80s, a genre I very much miss.
Well, you might have a problem because somebody may want to be starring in it.
Is Dana saying he wants to star in it?
No, not me.
No, he was trying to do a very poor impression of a particular current sitting president of the United States.
I'd be great at it. It'd be wonderful.
It's definitely Bigley.
Daddy's thick. Everybody knows Daddy's thick. All over.
Okay. This has gone off the rails.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back to Se7en. So outside of the current prescience of the moment with this film, what other impact has Se7en had on film and TV in the crime and horror genres?
I think the true long span of this thing, the long tail of it, is still not even felt. I don't think you have things like Law and Order, which everyone talked about how gruesome and violent this. Go ahead.
But Law and Order debuted before this even came out.
I think the long tail of it, though. So, now you have Law and Order, SVUs, CSI, like all these different variations. You have genres that, kind of like Pulp Fiction surfaces in 94. This movie surfaces in 95. And I think you have replicants of this for the next 20 years. And truly, Saw doesn't happen without this movie.
Yeah. I was just
And kind of
Saw is like an extension.
Absolutely. And I think Saw, like this movie, is not nearly as gruesome and violent as you think it is. Like, so much of this movie is through implication and just, the head in the box. Like, everyone thinking from the cool shop effect, oh, I saw the head in the box.
I don't think you're going to have half of the American wives in this country watching serial killer shows on television without this film.
So I have made this point before when we did the original Zodiac episode and then when we did the revisit, that I thought that was somewhat directly responsible for the boom of true crime, because it comes out right at the point where like Serial and some of these other shows are about to debut and they start really taking off. But it seems to me that David Fincher is just either ahead or he is the dawn of several major movements of like our level of appetite and perversion. And we only recognize through some of his seminal work that we're really interested in a particular subject when he starts to be interested in it. So with this, there's an element of the procedural cop drama with the body horror and like serial killer aspects. But it's only in the fictional sense when this movie comes out. By the time we get to Zodiac, now we're interested in like true crime stories and the historical background, and that starts to take off. Then we get something like The Social Network, where we start to all of a sudden have all of these tech billionaires and these quote unquote geniuses that we're starting to make movies about. I mean, how many Steve Jobs movies didn't come out almost immediately following that movie? And then we tap into the alternative version of The West Wing when he comes out with his version of House of Cards, where it's the underbelly, it's all the politicians are corrupt, and it's finally this last nail in the coffin of anybody thinking well of politicians, or at least that they have like a meaningful goodness. And right out of the tail of that, at the final end, as the show starts to unravel because of all the Kevin Spaciness, which we'll get to, trust me, we'll get to this episode. It has a way of cropping up when we least expect it, kind of like John Doe giving himself up in the police station. But when that starts to unravel, we get Donald Trump. And so now we're like moving into this next phase. He is interested in now doing this Cliff Booth movie. And I don't know, is that something else? Probably not. Just in the way that Mank and The Killer were not really seminal trigger points for America. But I'm waiting for when David Fincher gets the next itch for a movement or something in media that sparks an interest in the perverse side of ourselves that we want to be shown on TV and that we're entertained by.
So I actually think Mank is pretty prescient for the moment it was made. It's about a guy who's realizing the industry he works in is filled with horrible, narcissistic people, and he is now trying to fight for basically bringing a socialist governor to the forefront, but keeps getting suppressed by the companies he works for. So I think Fincher's dad was, with that screenplay, is onto something, I think, pretty interesting. And he releases it in 2020 in a year that I think makes a lot of sense for that movie. I need to give Mank a revisit, but I think the general texture of that movie was a lot more interested in the current politics and the current time we live in. Just like I think Se7en is. I mean, now granted, I also think Se7en feels like it can be made anytime. There's a couple shots of computers, but there's no cell phones. There's, walkie-talkies, but that's it. Otherwise, this is a movie that could be truly made anytime. It just, it takes place in hell.
On that note, when was the last time you were in a library?
A couple months ago.
Okay, because I can't remember the last time I was in a library, even for like the school library. Now that I think about it, the last time I was in a library was the law library at my college when I had to visit, and they made us go stand in like the entryway because that was big enough for them to take a group shot of us all. I didn't actually do anything other than stand in the library and then came back out, because why the hell do I need to be on a library? There's the internet.
But also, Somerset is the one going to the library, and he is somebody, honestly, I'm going to probably bring up No Country for Old Men a few times in this episode. So I think Somerset and Ed Tom Bell have so much in common. Somerset is this very odd, strange, especially for the industry he's working in, kind of person that, he's thinking that first murder scene, one of the first minutes you meet him, the first thing he says in a crime scene, he looks at the fridge and he sees the drawings of the kid. And instead of thinking, now let me go solve the murder, he's thinking, I wonder if I have to worry about the kid. Is the kid. Like his humanity is still intact somehow, even though he's worked what seems to be just the worst possible city imaginable. It's like Gotham on heroin and steroids. It's just crazy.
See, I've never taken that scene that way. I always think of it as he's thinking about the case because he's more interested in catching the guy. But even though he knows he probably won't. And so the kid is a potential witness, as opposed to he's really invested in the kid's well-being.
I would say that if you don't get the couple times throughout the movie where he is talking about kind of the importance of being a parent and a father, like that diner scene, I think is so much tied to completely understand his motivations and the way he sees the world through that one scene. And, I think it's just a beautifully written scene. And that scene in the 90s, casually talking about abortion, not demonizing anybody, just kind of saying, hey, if you choose not to do this, don't ever tell them. Like it's just this casual mentioning of it in a way that you can't do that now. I can't imagine putting that in the screenplay now so casually.
So, Dad, what is your relationship with the film?
I knew about it and I rented it as soon as it came out on DVD. I think it was, maybe it would have been VHS at the time yet.
It would have been VHS, yeah. 97, I think, is his first DVD, right? 96?
96, maybe. I know that your mother and I watched it. She, of course, denies having seen it. But I know that she and I watched it. It was one night we put it on after we put you guys all to bed.
I've only watched this one other time, and it was within the last 7 years, ironically enough. I don't remember specifically which year it was, but I just remember putting it on within the last 7 or so years. And it was kind of one of these completionist things, like I hadn't seen it, and it was a very famous movie. It's got the obvious cultural connection with the famous line at the end, and most people knew what the ending was. I kind of had an idea of what the ending was, but the ending has never quite had the same impact for me as some other twist endings that I didn't actually see ahead of time.
Tom, did you avoid it on purpose because it was a horror or kind of a horror adjacent?
Yeah, I think there was part of it. As everybody knows, I'm a major wuss when it comes to like horror and particularly body horror, but I thought this was always like super R horror type and not so much the crime procedural. I mean, now watching it, it really doesn't impact me that much as far as like the crime and the other stuff. There's really not anything that's particularly scary for me. I'm able to get through some things because I've become a little bit more desensitized to some of this stuff, but definitely like I'm not going to be going out to the next Conjuring movie or anything. But yes, you're probably right that I tried to avoid watching this for quite a while because I do remember the only time that I had watched it prior to this, I did it in broad daylight on like a Saturday.
Yeah.
So how about you, Peterson?
Yeah, so this is a movie. So it came out in 95 when I was 9. And I
Dating yourself.
Came out in September. I heard about it immediately. Like I just heard like this twisted movie about this serial killer. And I was like, what's a serial killer? And then I would assume sometime around 96 when it comes out on video, I watched it. So I watched it when I was probably 10. About I'd say 4 years before I'd even consider showing this to my kids. I was watching
I
it.
would say.
And, I liked it as a kid, and I was like, I thought it was kind of this weird, twisted thing. I also probably had a thing where I was like, man, I'm the cool kid who saw Seven. What'd you guys see?
Yep. I
And
definitely remember that growing up in the 90s. There were certain movies that were like, oh, you got to see the new Austin Powers movie?
and I just very vividly remember kind of in my sister, she had this like little apartment style room in our house, and remember watching it on that couch so many times on DVD or on VHS. And then when I bought the DVD, I watched that thing so many times. Because I just weirdly as violent and as kind of horrible as this movie is, and like from a content perspective, it's kind of oddly comforting. Like there's something that is like strange in the sense that like, there is humanity and heart and humor here.
Like cargo shorts are comforting or something else?
And we're talking like sweatpants, comfy, little
Oh.
hoodie, or sleeping naked even. That kind of cozy.
Yeah, because you're definitely not getting a handy in cargo shorts.
No, this isn't Nom. Come on. So it's a movie that I've been watching for close to 30 years, and kind of really appreciated it as a kid and loved it as a teenager, and I probably love it now more than I ever have.
So, Dad, do you have a plot summary ready for us?
I do. Seven, directed by David Fincher, is a dark crime thriller about two detectives trying to stop a serial killer. Detective Somerset, Morgan Freeman, an older cop close to retirement, is partnered with Detective Mills, Brad Pitt, a younger officer new to the city. They begin investigating a series of murders where each crime represents one of the 7 deadly sins: gluttony, greed, sloth, lust, pride, envy, and wrath. The killer John Doe carefully plans each murder as a twisted lesson about human corruption. Somerset and Mills struggle to keep up as the crimes grow more shocking and disturbing. The case takes a personal turn when Doe finally surrenders, leading the detectives to a final trap that tests their morals. The movie explores themes of justice, morality, and the darkness of human nature. Its bleak atmosphere and shocking ending leave a lasting impact, making Seven one of the most powerful crime films of the 1990s.
Thank you. Okay, so what is the film about?
So I think, and I've already alluded to it, but I think everything should be seen through the eyes of Somerset. And here's a man in the week he's about to retire getting one last case in a way that the worst possible case to it. It's not like he sees that first one and he's like, great, I'm clocking out on an easy one, and watching him navigate this lifestyle in this world, and he truly is wondering, have I done anything? Have I done anything to help? Have I changed the world in any possible way? And the question is, I don't know. So I think, kind of like Ed Tom Bell in No Country for Old Men, it's you get to the end of your life and you start realizing, has what I've done helped anyone? And this is such a bleak and horrible world we live in that maybe he didn't do anything to help anybody, because he certainly can't help Mills in the end. He can't help Tracy in the end. And I think that's part of the question of this movie is do the deeds we do in the end help or hurt anything?
Well, for me, I think this film is about integrity and morals, because what ultimately brings you down is your willingness to forego certain aspects. I mean, we've seen Mills act in certain ways throughout the film that question his integrity as an officer, kicking the door in and going in without a search warrant, There's a few other times where violence was a little bit excessive, etc. Somerset constantly telling him to calm down. We have to do things the correct way. Mills not wanting to be part of it. That ultimately is what leads to the sin that kills or takes him down from his thing. And I think Somerset is retiring when he is because he has tried to maintain his moral integrity throughout his career, and he sees it starting to wax. And so he wants to get out before it's too late.
Based on comments that David Fincher has made, not necessarily about this film, but just about his films generally, he believes that the world is dark and full of perversion, and that his films reflect what he feels the real world is. And so for me, a lot of this film centers on the religious aspects of sin and punishment. But I think that you don't need to be necessarily religious for those themes and models to play through. Crime and punishment, sin and punishment are just staples within, I guess, the American entertainment landscape of things we like to explore. People doing bad things and then seemingly whether they're caught or not. And in this case, Somerset has such a long history of experience telling him that there's really nothing productive about anything he's going to do. He's basically thrown in the towel, both mentally, physically, and metaphorically, as to whether or not he can make a difference. He's more or less retired already in his mind. And when you start thinking about retirement, you already are, or as the old saying goes. In this case, and I was going to save this, I guess, for remaining questions, but there's a part of me, given that we don't know what the city is, we don't get a lot of individuals' names. I mean, we get a code name California, and we never get the name of the police chief. And we really don't get names outside of our primary characters. Does this movie actually take place on Earth? Because I think there's a really good case to participate that this is actually either purgatory or hell itself. And they're all just figures within this hell landscape that just keeps repeating. And you can't ever leave, which is why Somerset can never actually retire.
That's an interesting theory. I don't know if I find much to support it in the movie. I do think there is a bit of it. I mean, it's a hellish landscape, but I don't know. I mean, God, it's a big question to ask kind of off the bat, but no, I mean, I think this is firmly in the real world. And the reason I do is because this might be a heightened version of the real world we live in. And kind of every environment is the worst possible environment you could see. But it's also, there's something in this that is I think too humane. And I think that's coming from Andrew Kevin Walker, who writes this script and is like, he's Tracy. He's coming from a small town and he's like, man, this big city of New York it's awful. It's horrific. And we're talking about a pre-Giuliani New York before, Mayor Rudy did some great things.
At Four Seasons Landscaping.
Or just his over-policing of the late 1990s. His over-policing of the late 1990s in New York City. So before New York really gets cleaned up. And I think the horror we're seeing feels pretty real. It's the same kind of horror you see in Taxi Driver.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think the difference there is that Paul Schrader was like, he's like, yeah, I used to write with a loaded gun next to me just to feel it, like feel the presence of it. Andrew Kevin Walker's like, I'm scared of all that. So he's writing something he's deeply scared of.
I know that we've asked this question before and probably relatively recently, but the film is primarily known in pop culture for its ending. So I ask again because I don't remember this movie necessarily coming up when we did this previous ranking, but where does this rank in the list of all-time movie twists? I would say it at least there's, to me, like a clear top 2 where it's The Empire Strikes Back and then it's The Sixth Sense. But after that, I think you can make a strong case that this could be at least in the conversation.
Is it a twist though? That's my question with the ending, because, and maybe it's I've seen it for 30 years, so there's no twist to me anymore. I know this movie like the back of my hand almost. To me, it's not really a twist. It's just that's where it progresses. So I don't know. I don't know if I really call this a twist in the same way that something like The Sixth Sense is built on that twist. And I guess Seven in some ways built on the reveal of what's in the box, but not in the same way, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you'd knock it down in your rankings. I think the last time we discussed this, The Usual Suspects was another one that's in there. So whether you throw in The Sixth Sense or this one or The Usual Suspects, or you also want to throw in, I think Dad at one point had put in The Crying Game. There are a lot of 90s movie twists when it was much more prevalent and popular. I would also say Memento's got a pretty strong ending reveal or twist. And frankly, Christopher Nolan's been trying to do that for a while. I think one that's not necessarily named as far as other ones in the Christopher Nolan canon, and I know most people are going to go to like The Prestige, where that one's a pretty interesting reveal at the end, but that one was always planned. Like you could definitely tell there was something behind it and they had to reveal what the magic trick was by the end. But I think one of his stronger actual twists is the Rachel death in The Dark Knight, because the movie flips on a dime as to like the stakes involved.
That's a true twist, yeah.
Yeah, when it gets to that point. But outside of those, I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting quite a few, but those have all got to at least be in the conversation for top 5, top 10.
I would say it's probably in the top 5. I mean, I kind of figured it out as I was watching it. I didn't know how it ended because I made sure that if people were talking about it, I didn't want to know anything about the film other than I wanted to see it when it came out on DVD or VHS, I should say. But I kind of figured it out because I said the only 2 left were Envy and Wrath. And I figured Gwyneth Paltrow's character had been so minimally in the film that something had to be involving Envy and Wrath, involving her. So it didn't surprise me too much, but the twist was at least it got your blood pumping. Let's say that when you watch it for the first time.
You said minimally in the film. I think, she's only in a couple of scenes, but her impact is significant. I think Paltrow is fantastic in this film. Part of what I think is so good about her is that she is vulnerable in a way that she can play like not a lot of other people.
She is 2% milk in this movie. She is so wholesome.
Yeah.
In amongst all of this other like nonsense and depravity and perversion, she's
like a China doll.
Yeah. There had to be something though that at the end of the film that brought her back in, that made it a full circle. Otherwise, her scenes meant nothing.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, I think Andrew Kev Walker is laying out like kind of why she's there. You're knowing she's wholesome as they can be, 5th grade school teacher, and the first time you see her, she looks pretty alive. When you see her in the diner, she just looks so beaten down. And this is only after a couple of days. The movie only takes place over about 7 days, which is pretty crazy how much we see and know about the characters, but also the change in everyone.
Yeah.
Especially Mills. I think Mills by the end of the movie is a very different Mills than we see at the beginning. And I think Pitt is it's a height of him trying to like prove himself as an actor, which I think goes into the casting in his performance beautifully. Because in some way, because you're like seeing this guy in the up and up as an actor, you are kind of like rooting for him in a way that you wouldn't if it was an established actor. Because all the different combinations of people you heard about that they wanted to have in this movie, I think they picked the perfect 2 people. Denzel would have been the Mills character, and Gene Hackman was the Somerset. Very different movie. I think I'd watch it probably because,
Well, we
yeah, I
got
would.
that in Crimson Tide.
Yeah. Like Pacino was floated, like all these people that I'm like, I don't know. Pacino, there's not enough cocaine on this set for Pacino. So to me, that's part of the magic of this movie is the performances in general, but getting Brad Pitt at this perfect stage of life where he's this like budding rose, and then also Gwyneth Paltrow, same thing. She'd been in a couple of things. And then Freeman, who was obviously a 2-time Oscar nominee by this point, but still people didn't know kind of his persona as a movie star. And then he just rides this bad boy for another 30 years. He's like, I'll play retired guys forever.
Did you know? When Mills and Somerset go to Wild Bill's leather store looking for information about John Doe, the clerk says that Doe had a limp. Behind them, outside the store, a man limping is shown watching the detectives.
Didn't catch that.
Didn't catch it either.
I didn't either. Did you know? New Line Cinema executives originally balked at the film's ending, but Brad Pitt refused to make the film if the ending was changed. I think that's become kind of like a staple story now about this movie. It's been passed around quite a bit. I'm sure it'll pop back up as this is the 30th anniversary and people will be talking or bringing this back up about the film. So you'll get all those like TikTokers that, the behind the scenes of the film, and this is like a really interesting fact.
Pitt protecting this movie is partly why it's as good as it is, I think.
Probably. Especially because I don't think David Fincher had the clout to try and like actually do that at this point. But
no.
And even to a degree, Morgan Freeman probably hadn't quite earned that because Shawshank hadn't really exploded quite yet into what it is now. I mean, it's only the year before, and he does get an Oscar nomination, but it's not Shawshank as we think of it now.
The only intervening thing is he had done Unforgiven before this,
I suppose.
So he was somewhat cementing, but he wouldn't have had the near clout that he would have.
He was still a black man in 90s America.
Yeah, but you got to think, though, I mean, Freeman, he's gets his Oscar nomination for Street Smart, Driving Miss Daisy's in. Did he get a nomination for that? Maybe.
I don't remember. The same year is also Glory, so.
Glory, which Denzel wins for. And then he's in a couple things, but then he's in Shawshank, and then this. I mean, he'd been around, but he was not a marketable star.
No.
Nobody was like, I gotta go see that next Morgan Freeman movie, and not in the same sense that with the Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt, you toss Brad Pitt in any movie and he's going to get a certain demographic of people showing up at that time.
I mean, we mentioned it last week about Donald Sutherland, that he is at times, leading star, but with a character actor's like process towards a leading man. Like, he's never going to be the same type of leading man where it's Cary Grant or it's Jimmy Stewart, where they're kind of playing the same kind of character repeatedly because they're the lead and that's what you expect. Jimmy Stewart chasing down a long lost love while he's got vertigo, or Jimmy Stewart as a press person, or, name your film essentially. Or it's Jack Nicholson in a mental institute, and then it's Jack Nicholson as the lead of a broadcast news division, and then it's Jack Nicholson playing the Joker, and it's all the same type of thing. But in this case, I would say Morgan Freeman, even though he's been occasionally the lead, he always brings a character actor's work style and mind process to how he's doing each of his characters. So even though he's the lead in this, and it's Morgan Freeman, he's still bringing something else that is there from somebody who is much more used to being in the background.
Well, I think part of the thing with the Morgan Freeman persona is that you can't cast him as an idiot on screen. He seems to have, one, an inherent decency about him, and two, an intelligence that kind of supersedes most characters. So,
Which is why he's been cast as the president and God, because he's probably the only black man in America that white Christians could accept as either of those two things.
Well, also Nelson Mandela. So another like messianic figure in some ways. So, and God, I really don't care for that Nelson Mandela performance whatsoever. I think it's like the sleepiest he's ever been on screen. I don't know if you realized they were filming certain scenes.
Well, he probably doesn't wake up for a second take, even though he's been in a lot of Clint films.
You know that him and Clint are on set, and he's like, Clint, what's on craft services today? They got that chicken salad I like. Clint's like, hell yeah, they do. Yeah, let's go.
All right. Did you know David Fincher told Kevin Spacey and Brad Pitt, quote, "This is not going to be the movie that you're remembered for, but it may be a movie you're incredibly proud of."
I think Fincher's wrong there.
I mean, if you're to do a Brad Pitt Rushmore, this is at least in that conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's probably like Ocean's 11, Moneyball, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, partially because it's his Oscar win. And then the conversation starts on a couple of other ones. I would say probably Fight Club gets in over 7.
Maybe. I think some other conversations would be potentially Legends of the Fall, where he is, I don't think it's a great performance by him, but he is so insanely handsome in that movie that is like the character. He literally, there's that moment where he like flicks the water off his hat and you're like, this is like the most beautiful anybody's ever been on screen. You know, that's, I think as well, you can think about not necessarily a great movie, but Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Benjamin
just
Button.
because,
Like, to make that over some of the other ones that I mentioned, I just don't see that.
No. I'm just saying he's got several movies that would be in contention, I think. And I think 7's high up on the list.
I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Fight Club are probably the 2 locks. And after that, I mean, start cycling through your list of Ocean's 11, Moneyball, 7, and whatever else you want. Some people might say Benjamin Button for some reason.
Should we start thinking about the Mount Rushmore as a set of 5? Because you know Donald's going to put his face up there. So should we go ahead and say top 5?
Just blow up the fucking mountain then. Anyway, let's move on. Did you know Denzel Washington turned down the role of Mills that went to Brad Pitt, telling Entertainment Weekly that the film was too dark and evil. He later regretted his decision upon seeing a screening. I don't know. He kind of got his version of this movie in Training Day.
No, I mean, the closest he has to this is Fallen a few years after this. And that is one of the 7 ripoffs. And that movie is a stinky pile of poop.
Yeah, well, most of the usual spin-offs or rip-offs, such as Die Hard on a Bus or Die Hard on a Slope or whatever, those usually stink. Did you know all of John Doe's books were real books written for the film? They took 2 months to complete and cost $15,000. Why? It just...
You didn't even see more than a couple of them.
I know. Well, no, you saw like bookshelves of them,
Yeah,
but
they were.
you weren't going to see anything that was in them.
No. Yeah.
It could have just been blank. Then no one would have known.
Or like you distress them a little bit. I mean, they're fairly common notebooks. They probably could have been bought for relatively cheap.
Yeah, you could have, I mean, if you're doing this independently, you're doing $150 on those and calling it a day.
David, we'd have to send somebody over to Staples or Office Max to get some books. Otherwise, we could just order them and then have somebody spend, several weeks writing in them for $15,000. Let's go with the $15,000.
I mean, he is very about all of his films, but this just seems overkill. Did you know David Fincher was impressed with Gwyneth Paltrow's work in Flesh and Bone from 1993? She was his first choice for the role of Brad Pitt's wife. Paltrow was initially not interested, so Fincher asked her then-boyfriend, Brad Pitt, to convince her to meet with him. Nothing like using a relationship for your advantage.
You should know.
Are you referring to the nepotism or something else?
You're the one who always does.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to clarify here because I wasn't sure what your angle you were trying to attack. Anyway, that looks like a good spot for our first break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 281st episode, we welcome back Braden Ganter to discuss The Martian from 2015, celebrating its 10th anniversary. Directed by Ridley Scott, written by Drew Goddard, cinematography by Darius Wolski, music by Harry Gregson Williams, starring Matt Damon, Jessica Chastain, Kristen Wiig, Jeff Daniels, Michael Pena, Kate Mara, Sean Bean, Sebastian Stan, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Dad, if I recall, I don't believe you have seen that film.
I have not.
Which is part of the reason that I put it on the list for next week.
Figured.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a hard movie not to like.
Oh yeah, it's a definite crowd pleaser.
And my wife every couple of months is like, we should watch something like The Martian. It's not that many like it because it's fun.
Yeah. Even for as long as it is, and it's probably maybe a little bit too long, there are a lot of people that really love that movie that I'm like, really? Like, that's one of your favorites? Or you've seen that? But yeah, I guess it's like one of these modern favorites. And I've heard it, oddly enough, among a large contingent of the female cohort.
Wonder if it's going to make the top 50. Well, it's made 50. I don't. So
that is true, and
yes.
I feign to reveal anything right now. But that being said, that will come up here in a few minutes. But before we get there, Peterson, what are you working on, and where can people find you?
You can find my back catalog at The War Starts at Midnight. We've got about 100 episodes or so there you can check out. My back catalog here, as we've just discussed, 10 main feed, one specialty episode. And I'm in a couple coming up here real soon.
Yeah, you better be settled in for your residency here, because while you're not on next week, you're on both back-to-back weeks the following weeks for Spartacus, and I can't even remember what the other one was, to be honest.
Rebel Without a Cause.
Yes, that's right.
Rebel Without a Cause, yeah. God, that movie's 70 years old. Jesus. And Spartacus is 65. That's pretty wild. Yeah. So yeah, those, check out those 10, and then those couple coming up, and then obviously this guy right here.
All right. So with that, we'll do just a little bit of housekeeping here for the purposes of the show. First off, I want to welcome in our new listeners from 2 different countries that we have to the list. So Lithuania, which completes our Baltic region with Estonia and Latvia.
I need to tell my friend from Lithuania.
Yeah.
Hello, Lithuania.
And also Trinidad and Tobago.
Hello, Trinidad and Tobago.
All right. So we're up to 124 total countries that we have been listened in. Although some of those, I mean, like there's Guam technically on this list. There's Guadeloupe, which is a French territory. So, I mean,
only one country matters, Tom.
Yeah. Okay. America. Anyway, but some other housekeeping for the evening. Now, because of who we're talking about tonight, I feel that it's necessary to do the GMOAT Hall of Fame for this month. So just a quick recap of last month here. So last month we inducted 2 nominees, Michael Kahn as an editor, and we also inducted Franz Waxman for the composer category. Tonight I have 3 different nominees for you, one in producer, director, and writer. I have one who is just a director, and I have one actor. So what would you like to start with?
Well, let's do the simpler one, actor.
All right. This is an actor who is quite notable anytime that you see him on screen, particularly for one role. He has been featured as a voice actor in Toy Stories 1 through 3. He has also been in this movie that we are discussing this evening, but his most notable role is Full Metal Jacket. I give you R. Lee Ermey.
Yeah.
And I say yes as well. So he is inducted in the actor category. So he joins a cohort currently consisting of James Stewart, Harrison Ford, Morgan Freeman, Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, Tom Hanks, and John Ratzenberger.
A lot of GMOAT Hall of Famers in this cast. Freeman, Pitt, Ermey now. Is this the chillest he's ever been on screen?
Probably.
Yeah. Every once in a
right.
while, you just want him to break out and tell him to drop and do 10.
All right. Next, we have either one of the directors or the 3-part nominee.
Do the director.
Okay. Now, this one's also going to be relatively easy for you because we are also discussing him tonight. This is a man who has directed The Social Network, Fight Club, Gone Girl, Zodiac, and Seven. I give you David Fincher.
Yes.
Yes. So we have yet another, and our 5th designee into the director category behind Steven Spielberg, Alfred Hitchcock, Billy Wilder, and Christopher Nolan. He is our 5th inductee tonight. Finally, I give you a 3-part nominee. He is going to be nominated for producer, director, and writer simultaneously. So he would be our first 3-time inductee. But frankly, this is the one that I just thought of and had to add to the list because it's a glaring omission that I hadn't thought of him before. This is a man who has produced, written, and directed Full Metal Jacket, The Shining, Dr. Strangelove, 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Barry Lyndon, and we will be discussing his Spartacus in a couple of weeks, Stanley Kubrick.
How could you not have Stanley Kubrick?
I know. So he will be our 3rd inductee tonight. He will be the 3rd inductee and producer behind Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. He will also be joining David Fincher in the category of director as our 6th nominee and inductee there. And he will be our 2nd screenwriter behind Billy Wilder to be joining that class as well. So a very good Hall of Fame tonight. R. Lee Ermey, Stanley Kubrick, and David Fincher.
One name I'll put on your list for later, Howard Shore, who's the composer here. When you do the Lord of the Rings films, he does all 3 of those as well.
Good call.
Yeah, how he's talented.
He may already be in contention or very close to getting on the list as it is. So a couple of his additional credits, Big, which we've covered, this movie, obviously. The Departed is coming up soon. The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, that's right.
He also did Spotlight, which we've done on the show, and That Thing You Do, which we're also covering next year. He is also responsible for Mrs. Doubtfire, Philadelphia, Panic Room, Gangs of New York, Hugo, The Aviator, The Departed, After Hours, and then he's got some other various ones like Crash, the non-Best Picture winning one from the 90s.
Okay.
So, yeah, he might be very close, but thank you. We'll take that under advisement on the short list. I have a long document of potential shortlist people to potentially add to different categories. But at least for the purposes of tonight, those will be our 3. So we can move on from there to other things. And I think this is what everybody has been waiting for. It's time yet again to reveal the next set in the Cinema Legacy poll. Last week, we left you on a cliffhanger saying that we weren't going to tell you what 101 was because we had a tie at the number 100, meaning that 101 does not exist on this current iteration of the list. That being said, tonight we will reveal to you numbers 100 through 91. Now, to start off, we have the tie at number 100 between 2 films. One we've covered on the show, and the other we have covered on the show. One was last season, and the other one goes back to season 1 with one of Dana's best moments of the show. We have The Maltese Falcon from 1941, and we also have The Bridge on the River Kwai from 1957. Hitler, he's only got one ball. Anyway.
Yes.
All right. Moving on, we have a three-way tie at number 97. All Quiet on the Western Front from 1930, West Side Story from 1961, and Fight Club from 1999. Cargo Shorts made the list ahead of 7.
That shit out of here. Jerome Robbins is rolling over in his grave right now. And it's probably a really fucking elegant rolling over, too.
All right. Then we have a tie. So this is our third set of ties here in the list we're revealing. At number 94, we have All That Jazz from 1979, Night of the Living Dead from 1968, and Toy Story from 1995. Then at number 93, we have our first inductee for Spike Lee with Malcolm X from 1992. Then at number 92, we have the original Nosferatu from 1922. And finally, our last reveal this evening, number 91, The Conversation from 1974, our first Francis Ford Coppola movie of the list.
Yeah. Glad it
So let's just do a recap or a quick rundown as we've done each week so far. Dad, have you seen The Maltese Falcon and The Bridge on the River Kwai?
Of course.
I assume so, since we've covered those. But Peterson, I'm assuming you've seen both films.
I have seen both.
Okay, so for then the tie at 97, Dad, you've obviously seen Fight Club. All three of us were on that episode.
Yes.
We're just missing one particular person. Wave your arms in the air like you just don't care. Anyway, then we have West Side Story from 1961. I'm assuming all three of us have seen that film.
Yes.
Yeah, I made my list.
Okay. And then All Quiet on the Western Front. We covered that a
Yes.
couple of weeks ago. The Best Picture winner from 1930. Also, that brings us to having 3 more Best Picture winners on this list so far. In The Bridge on the River Kwai, West Side Story, and All Quiet on the Western Front. I think that brings our total to 6 so far in the top 30 that we've revealed. All right, then Night of the Living Dead, I have not seen.
I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have not seen All That Jazz.
I have. Roy Scheider, I watched it on HBO in like 1980 or 81 and was just appalled to watch Bob Fosse's self-destruct.
Oh, God. I love All That Jazz. One of my favorite films. Also, 1001 has a recent episode about this. Go check that out with Kieran B. I know this is a Kieran B favorite. I love this movie, too.
All right. And I think all of us, especially 2 of us, kind of grew up in this era, and the other one had to drag someone else to it. But Toy Story, all of us, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen it this week, though.
All right.
You didn't have to drag me. I took you kids to all the Disney films.
I don't think you took us to all of them, but you took us to quite a few.
A lot, or almost all of them. Lion King.
During the 90s, yes.
Yeah.
So that's 2 weeks in a row that Arlie Ermy is making the top 120. Good for him. Look at Arlie.
That is correct. GMOAT Hall of Famer Arlie Ermy. Put some respect on that name. Also, Malcolm X, Dad. Have you seen it?
I have not. That's a glaring weakness of mine.
I've watched a third of it. I think I watched the first hour, and as I watch a lot of movies, it's like one where I watch it in stages or in like chunks. And for whatever reason, I must have gotten distracted or gotten with something else, and I just never went back to it. So I've only watched like the first 45 minutes to an hour, and it's 3 hours. So I can't even call that like barely a partial watch.
Great film. Excited to make the top 120.
I have not seen Nosferatu, the original from 1922. I did watch about half of the Robert Eggers one from last year.
I've seen Nosferatu from 1923. Yeah.
Okay.
I have seen it also, and I want to say it was when it was in school. I want to say that like one of our, it may have been for like Halloween, we got a copy of it from the library, and Mr. Fujikawa showed it in class for like one Friday afternoon when we were at our Halloween party.
Okay.
I will say this was a very late cut for me, Nosferatu.
All right, and then finally, I have not seen The Conversation. It has been on my short list for quite some time.
I have not.
Great film. Great Gene performance.
All right. So initial reactions to those 11 films, other than Fight Club being ranked ahead of 7.
Yeah, I think there's, some stuff seems kind of low. Like Bridge on the River Kwai seems a little bit too high up and close to 100. It seems like it should be a little bit lower. I wasn't in my 50s, so I guess I can't really say that. But for the most part, yeah, I think it's a great 10 or a great 11. Sorry, great 11. Fight Club's really the only one that I'm like, that could be a 200. Which I'm trying to think of it. It'd probably be somewhere like 250 for me in my favorite movies. That'd be generous too.
I think it's, good that it didn't get any higher.
So in this subsection of the list, this is the first time that we've done a reveal, and we have yet to have an international film in it. The other 2 weeks, we've had at least 2 in each of those drops.
All Quiet on the Western Front?
It's not a foreign film.
It could have been made in Europe, though, and that could be quote-unquote international feature.
It wasn't. It was made on a soundstage by Fox.
Was it? Okay.
I think it's Fox. I'm pretty sure it's Fox, but yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, that's interesting, but, who knows? I think you're going to have fits and starts with international films, though. I think you're going to have certain chunks of 10 where you see 3 or 4, and then some where you see 0. And that's just because, unfortunately, sometimes that 3-inch barrier can be tough. That 1-inch barriers can be tough.
I know that we have had mostly American or English speaking films on the list, and that's to be somewhat expected because the gross majority of film created over the last 100 years, and especially those that are popular film, are from America or England or English speaking. I guess we got to include Canada in there. At least, what is it, 11 out of the 12 provinces that speak English? You're still not, this isn't the end.
Quebec, it's just with a heavy French accent.
But I would say that definitely this is not the end of the international films that will be coming up on the list.
Do you think partly not seeing as many international films is because it's so much easier to just pop on 7 than it is something you have to actively be reading? Even though, I love international cinema. A lot of international films made my top 50. But it's so much easier to be like, oh, it's a Friday night, let me watch The Mummy, instead of even a Kurosawa that's like tons of fun and, like popcorny.
I think it also hurts maybe the diversity of our list, just the makeup of who were the participants. Most of the participants that we invited are people that are primarily English language speaking as a first language. Partly because that's just, our community of people. We do have some people who are international in this list, but of them, they're still able to speak English and communicate in English. So that helps. And yet I still think we have a good mixture of things. I mean, of the 4 films, we have 2 Kurosawas, and we have 2 other modern top films. I don't think international film has been ignored, although I'm a little miffed that one of my top 5 films in Harakiri did not make the list. So I guess that's an additional reveal to the audience out there that the number 1 movie on Letterboxd is not on this list.
Yeah, and I'm a little sad that my number 8 was in the 110 through 101. It was Ron. Made me sad that was not in the top 100, just because I think it should be, but it is what it is.
So any other reaction?
No, the list is coming along great. I'm very excited to see each week to week.
So we will be narrowing this down in smaller chunks as we get closer to the top. Right now, we've been revealing up to 10, I think, until we get to 50. Then we'll start in on 5s until we get near the end. But it'll start narrowing down, and we'll do some more specific analysis when we have less films to discuss. But I am very pleased with how the list has come out so far, and all of the activity that we've had on social media, as well as everybody who's been sharing and liking and everything else that's been going on. I know, at least on behalf of my dad and I would like to say thank you to everybody who's been participating with this and has been really receptive of this project so far. So we're very excited to share everything with you, but we have a plan on how we're going to release this. And so we're trying to, I guess some people might say we're trying to milk it. I don't feel like we are, but yes, there is a long way to go to Christmas Eve when we get the top 2 films.
I'll say this. I don't think you're milking it. I think with all the bleakness in the world, and this movie's part of it, with all the bleakness we have around us, this is milking a chance to celebrate something that a community loves, which is film. And so each week being able to talk about another set of 5-10 movies, and then once you get to the tops, even condensed down farther, I think is, to me, a net positive for society.
And with that, I don't know if Dad and I have decided about if we're going to talk about our own individual lists of 50 at all, or how we're maybe going to even discuss it. But I know that there are a lot of the participants of this project that are going to be contributing to a collaboration discussion that they're going to pre-record for the Revisionist Almanac that will be available over there at some point in the near future. I know I'm probably preempting any announcement that Andrew was going to do about putting that material and that content out, but be looking forward in advance for that coming up in the near future. So let's get back into our movie of the evening. We left off at Best Performance. Dad, who did you have down?
I had David Fincher. As good as the performances are of the actors in this film, I think David Fincher sets the tone, the speed, the direction, the overall artistic expression of the film. And I think he by far exceeds expectations, especially for really his first major film.
Technically, it's his second, but it's the first one where he has a lot more control, and it's outside of the kind of studio system. He's been very public about his problems on Alien 3.
Yeah.
And the mess that was. But that being said, I would agree with you. We often nominate directors in this category of best performance primarily because of the overall effect that they have on the film. And while David Fincher does not technically write any of his films, he has such an outsized control just due to his almost OCD level of control of everything that's going to appear on camera. I don't even think he edits his own films, but it's like he edits his own films because he has a very specific thing that he always wants to see, whether it's from his actors, whether it's from his set production or whatever else. He's very maniacal and has gotten even more so about everything that he wants to see on screen. So I also have him here.
He is a very visual director. He is probably the most visual director there has been, with the possible exception of Hitchcock, who...
Oh, Stanley Kubrick is a higher level of visual director in my mind, but this is like that next tier.
Okay. Because, Hitchcock's background was he was a storyboard artist originally. And so every film, he did his own storyboards. And so every shot was well planned. And I see Fincher with the same parallels.
By the way, and I'm just going to bring this up because you talked about storyboards, and this has nothing to do with Seven, but just throwing out something I learned like this week on Twitter, something where, it wasn't an actual cesspool for once. Did you know that Steven Spielberg did not storyboard at all the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan? He just basically went out there and shot it.
Pretty wild.
And I know he did it.
Fuck?
I know. And I know he did it using a special camera so that it looked like it was a home movie.
And I think it's also interesting because it's 5 years after Schindler's. And that is the first movie where he consciously said, I am not storyboarding. So it's interesting that his two most serious films, I guess Amistad's on that list too, but Amistad kind of
It takes a poop near the end.
Yeah, like Amistad, I think is very well meaning, but it's also like, Steve, why are you making this, Steve? This isn't really for you to tell, I think. So I think, but it's interesting that his most serious films he refuses to, or doesn't. He kind of wants to challenge himself in that way.
Peterson, did you also have Fincher, or did you have somebody else?
So I thought about going with Fincher, but I actually ended up going with Brad Pitt in this. And the reason is not only because of his performance, I think he's fantastic in this film, but I think everything he does to kind of help Fincher realize his vision and all the battles that Pitt was like, I'm going to take that battle for you. I'll take that battle, because the power he had in Hollywood at the time, and honestly, it's because of the way he looked, just because he's like truly like the most beautiful man that ever walked the face of the earth. It's like, so I think he uses his power at the time for in great effect for this movie. This is not the same film without it. Every time there's an issue, Pitt's like, great, let me go make the call. So Pitt's my guy.
Best secondary performance, I have Morgan Freeman. He's just a very solid presence in your film. Wherever he is, you know what you're going to get. He is going to deliver a seriousness and quality to the film at all times. And he's the backbone of providing all of the information that the audience really needs to figure this out. But he doesn't necessarily have this up and down the way that Pitt does. So they kind of balance each other out really well in this movie. And I think this is like, between Shawshank and this is probably the peak of Morgan Freeman's career.
I mean, he wins an Oscar for $1 Million Baby 9 years after this, so 10 years after Shawshank. And I think he's pretty fantastic in that film. But yeah, I mean, this.
And then he's a black CEO by the end of the next year, where he's in Batman.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got 2 Apex Mountains, whatever that means.
The Bucket List in 2007, you know?
Excellent film. I love the film. It's fun. Is it a high quality film? No, but
Jack and Morgan just having a fun, just cutting a rug together.
Yeah, but by the very nature of the name of the film, it can't be your peak. It's got to come at the tail end. Anyway, moving on. Other secondary performances.
Yeah, so I went with Freeman as well. I think a pretty understated but an incredibly nuanced performance. I think it might be my favorite Morgan Freeman performance. Shawshank, I think, is certainly in that conversation. He's wonderful in that film. I just think he has a little bit more to do in this film than he has in Shawshank, because he is so secondary in Shawshank. It's all about Andy and the way Andy's interacting with the world. You know, and I wouldn't say that if we didn't get the dinner table scene and the diner scene. And the reason I think those two scenes are so pivotal is because they're so focused on Freeman and the way he's interacting. And I think it's the really interesting choice that Freeman makes when he is talking in that dinner table scene. He can't sit still. And he's like fooling around with his napkin. He's moving around. And he makes this conscious choice to play it as a guy who is so uneasy and like physically shows it, because he's just not used to human interaction. And then that diner scene, I think, is just miraculous from a writing perspective, from performance perspective. So I think Freeman's my guy for secondary.
I did something different this week by happenstance. I did my quotes first and then went back and did my performances. And so as a result, after having read some of them, Andrew Kevin Walker is my best secondary. Some of the lines he wrote are so fucking awesome that I had to put him in there. I mean, he did a phenomenal job of writing, coming up with the whole series and thinking the whole plot through. But some of the dialogue is just fantastic. So he's my best secondary performance.
Tough to argue. He's great.
Yeah. I have no problem with it. It's not one that, given the star power in this movie, that was really on my short list, but I really don't have a problem with nominating him because he's right. There is a lot of great dialogue in the movie. I think that's part of what sells the movie for people like me, even though like body horror and some of the crime procedurals get kind of old. There's a good give and take primarily between the two leads, but there's also a lot of other peripheral stuff that kind of keeps you engaged. So I think he did a good job keeping a very contained story and something that obviously was going to startle audiences, and as we mentioned, has a lot of peripheral tail on it that maybe hasn't even completely come to the fore. Most charismatic, I don't think it's going to be any real surprise given the way I talked about her earlier, but Gwyneth Paltrow, she is the girl next door. She is innocence, but she is incredibly appealing. And I'm not even just talking like a sex appeal type of thing, but just the innocence that she portrays on screen is so inviting when you're in the middle of all the shit that's going on around them.
Tom, I think very interestingly brought up like not the sex appeal aspect of her. I think Gwyneth Paltrow is kind of undoubtedly a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
But I don't think she is sexy necessarily. And I think that is a huge distinction and partly why she works so well in this role. Like she's not oozing sex appeal when she walks on screen.
To differentiate, I don't want to get into the discussion like The Office where they're trying to go back and forth on whether she's hot or not. I would agree with you.
They had this conversation on The Office? I've not
seen
that
that's right. You've never seen that show. But yes, there's a whole episode where they're trying to decide whether Hilary Swank is hot or not. And there's one point where they think they've finally broken the tie because The Office is completely divided right down the middle. And they've convinced one of them, would you do her? And that was like the deciding factor of whether she was hot or not. So they thought they had convinced somebody. And then he's like, no, I'm sorry. The question was whether she is hot, not whether you would do her. And it's just so arbitrary and stupid as to what is like sex appeal and what is hot. But I agree with you that in this particular function, like Gwyneth Paltrow is appealing, definitely a very beautiful woman, but she is not somebody that like is going to be the pinup girl in somebody's locker or whatever.
She's very sexually appealing, kind of like her mother. Her mother was always an attractive woman, but never really in the roles that, she had to play the siren, Blythe Danner, her mother. And so I think she has the very similar quality about her. She's going to be an attractive person. People will think she's very pretty, attractive, but it's not going to be the wah, 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 va, va, boom.
Also,
what are you, a 90s gangster now?
Yes, I am. Bada bing, bada boom.
I feel like you should be quoting Chaz Palminteri for the rest of the episode.
So, all right. Anyway, for most charismatic, I have Morgan Freeman. I find that whenever Morgan Freeman is in any film, you automatically are drawn to him. He can tell more about a character and what he has this, like when he is surprised as an actor, supposedly in his character. I mean, he has this facial expression that you just always remember, and you get so drawn in. And his ability to connect with audiences, I find so fascinating. I don't know of another actor that, maybe Tom Hanks a bit, but Morgan Freeman, everybody just wants to root for him, no matter what role he's in, because he just has this ability to connect.
Anthony Hopkins to me is probably the closest person to Morgan Freeman in the sense that immediate command on screen. The second he opens his mouth, like you listen.
I'm sorry, I never am rooting for Hannibal in that movie.
Well, I'm not saying you're rooting for him, but like the second Hopkins, like, I'll say Meet Joe Black, that movie has more problems than you can think of, but Hopkins is so dialed in that movie, and he turns some dialogue that is true shite and just like polishes it beautifully. And it's the same kind of thing Morgan Freeman can do. It's like you give this guy a monologue, and it might be written by a 4-year-old, but they exude a gravitas on screen. So to me, that's a good parallel between the two.
He is the voice of God, after all.
It'll be a very, very sad day when, Morgan is 88.
Yeah. We're going to lose a lot of greats very soon. It's going to be hard. Yeah.
Everybody that really made an impact basically in the 70s and 80s is about to go.
It's tough. Yeah. You think Robert Duvall, De Niro, Pacino,
Jack
Coppola, Scorsese,
Warren Beatty. God, just all these guys. It's
Hoffman.
Yeah, it's Sissy Spacek. It's like you name it. Julie Christie.
Yep.
It's tough. I think. Yeah, I think that Freeman is one of those guys that will be remembered for his gravitas and obviously playing things like God or just his narration. Yeah, he's one of the greats.
Given my proximity to the internet and breaking news a lot faster than my dad, I've been preparing my conversation for eventually when Mel Brooks passes.
Yeah.
I feel it's probably going to be similar to when I had to call and break the news to him about Bob Uecker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also called and told me about Bob Newhart, but it came across while I was in the doctor's office, and I saw it and ended up talking to the doctor about it, because I spend, a 45-minute appointment with my doctor for 5 minutes talking about my health and the other 40 talking about my podcast.
Does he listen?
He has, yes. My pulmonologist. And he always wants my list of 5 films that he and his wife should watch.
My son had surgery on his nuts at a young age, and the doctor who did it, I was GM and wine director.
Is this appropriate for the podcast?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It was a very, very normal surgery. Truly, he has surgery. I haven't even gone to get coffees for my wife and I, and then they're already coming back and saying, "Oh, everything's good." No, but so I was GM and wine director, and the surgeon was like, "I'd love to come. Can I come?" I was like, "Sure, come on in." And like 2 days later, he was there. He's popping up in the restaurant, and I was like, "Hey, good to see you. I talked to you like 24 hours ago because I was worried about some redness, but all good."
So what was your most charismatic?
So I went with Fincher here. I just think, and it's tough, leaving Andrew Kevin Walker off. I do want to say it's kind of a tough person to leave off, because I think the script of this film is truly incredible, just from a structure standpoint. But Fincher, it's kind of like taking a script that is very good, and he just makes it the best possible version. It is so polished, and I think this is something I would argue is like a perfect film. Not necessarily the greatest film, just like from a construction standpoint, I don't think there's anything out of place. The story it's trying to tell, I think it tells truly in a perfect manner.
Let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. I have Gluttony, so at the beginning where they find the guy drowning in his own spaghetti. Then I have The Dinner, which is between the 3 primary leads in this movie. I have Sloth, which is Dad's favorite part of the film. It was the only part he said that creeped him out about the whole thing the first time I watched it.
Well, truly, you watch it and you're like, that's a skeleton. That is a skeleton.
I think I saw that it took 14 hours of makeup to get him to that level.
God, I mean, that's the scene that when I saw it as a 10, 11-year-old, I was just like, holy shit. This is...
I jump.
Envy is the one now that I'm like, oh my, it's so... No, sorry, Lust is so hard to watch.
Yeah.
But the Sloth one at 11, I was like, holy shit, this is wild.
Well, yeah, and the guy, I think, legitimately weighed 90 pounds by the time he did the scene, but yeah. Then I have Foot Chase, and then I have finally the ending, What's in the Box. Any others to add here?
I would add the diner scene.
Okay.
It's in there.
No, it's dinner, then there's diner.
Okay.
So the
Yeah,
dinner
that's-
between the three primary
All
leads
right.
where they're at
Okay.
the Mills house and the train's running by, and they have that kind of dinner conversation between the three of them. Why aren't you married? What happened that you what do you feel? I mean, there's some good character development and exploration in that, but the diner, I would agree, probably should be in here, but it's hard to single out all five because there's so many individually memorable scenes in this movie.
It's tough, yeah. I mean, it's truly spin the bottle, and it's every scene's memorable.
I thought you just had a typo.
Okay.
2 N's
Dinner,
for
dinner.
diner.
Any others to add? Hearing none. So then best scene, gluttony, dinner, sloth, diner, foot chase, or what's in the box. What is the best scene?
What's in the box for me? Because it sums up everything about the film. The flaws in Mills, the hope in the humanity in Somerset, and just the sheer depravity of Doe and of society in general.
I would agree. I think there's a part of me that, especially with how long he had planned out the whole sloth thing for like a year in advance, and he has all these notebooks and whatever else, to take kind of that left guerrilla turn where this seems like the least amount of planning, that this is somehow personal, that you're attacking the specific detective in order to accomplish your last two, that you seemingly didn't have a plan, or that you've had to call a complete audible on that one. It still sits a little odd with me, but everything in the film, every other scene leads to that moment. And no matter what you're going to nominate, everything is in concert working up to that ending. So for me, that has to be the best scene, because otherwise the movie doesn't accomplish anything. If that scene does not work, it is for naught.
It wasn't until I watched it this time and started paying attention to Spacey's dialogue that I understand the envy, which is his own envy towards what Mills had, which is the pretty wife. And I tried to play husband and it didn't work. So I took a souvenir, her pretty head.
I think the key to it as well is it's not so much that it's just him being envious and trying to live the life. It's that he is envious of the ability to kind of shut your mind off and have that kind of dissonance with yourself and saying, I live in this world of hate and greed and awfulness, but I can still go home to my beautiful wife. I can still go home to my dogs and try to have this normal life. So I think that's part of the big thing for envy for me. Also my scene of the film. I think it sort of has to be. The one thing I'll buff back with you, Tom, is you said you find it a little bit convenient in some way.
I don't know if it's convenient, maybe just puzzling.
So I think what happens is when they get to the the apartment, it obviously changes what John Doe's plan is.
Yeah.
I think the plan was always in some way to take Tracy's head and put it in the box. And the reason I say that is because why is he taking pictures of the crime scene? He wants to know the detectives. He wants to know who they are so that when he finally does get to the point, and obviously he doesn't pick Somerset, he picks Mills because Mills has kind of in what would be the more full life. So I think having him at the crime scene is setting up that he's starting to plan things now for the final couple of murders.
I think that's part of the reason the ending works is that I can't really buy into that notion that he has that planned in advance. Everything else seems meticulously thought out to the point of like obsession. But the last two, as part of his masterpiece, he's going to rely on a detective from out of town getting a transfer in at the last second. And then within a few days, he's planned and done this other alternative thing. Like, I can follow you to the standpoint that he had to call an audible because they invaded his home. And so he doesn't have some of his resources. And maybe he had a completely different plan. But to me, there's no way in advance of even knowing who the detectives that would be assigned from homicide to the case that he could anticipate taking her head until probably the couple of days before it happened.
Yeah, which that partly why I think it's 7 days essentially is all that is taking place over.
Right.
Each day we have a different murder, basically. So I think in some way he has maybe not the exact thing planned, but he's got something planned. Otherwise, I don't know. We know he's a genius. We know he's incredibly smart and resourceful. So I don't know. It's one of those things I can kind of hand wave it away to. That I'm like, I don't really need to think about it.
Favorite scene for me, I'm going to do the foot chase. Partly because there's some level of wish fulfillment after you've seen the ending that wonders if Brad Pitt doesn't get caught with, what was it, like a tire iron or a crowbar or something. Did they catch him and then his wife is saved?
I think that scene is all about John Doe has the upper hand the entire time. There's never a moment where Pitt has any upper hand on him. Pitt almost gets shot like 3 or 4 times.
Except when he confronts them or sees them outside his door, where he has not anticipated them being there. That's why that scene is meaningful for me, or why I like it, because I'd like to think of the world as a place where we do catch the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the message of the film, and it's definitely not what David Fincher was going for, but there's that like small kernel of hope.
Yeah, and I think my favorite scene is the diner scene. And the reason is because all of the themes of the film I think are kind of wrapped up and bundled into it, except for the one which is, have I made a difference? Freeman, I think, gives an astounding performance. I think he is absolutely miraculous in that scene. And watching it, I think, gets into the heart of what the Somerset character is all about. It's the moral compromises you make with yourself. And even when you make the right decision, it still haunts you for years. Because he says, I forced the abortion, basically. I like pressed. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't know they made the right decision, but I don't stop thinking about it and wondering if it was. So I think the moral compromises you make within yourself to be able to live kind of a normal life inside of an abnormal world.
Only Peterson would pick that as his favorite.
No, it's not only Peterson. So that's my favorite.
A lot of white men love talking about abortion here.
I think it's where two people are in a very chaotic, horrible circumstance, reach down and have an intimate moment and open up and show their inner peace or their own humanity.
Yeah. I also think it just shows how lonely and depressed and sad she is, that she is calling his partner that the Brad Pitt character barely even knows.
And doesn't seemingly like.
Yeah, like I think Pitt is like, this guy's just an annoying. And then I think after the dinner table scene, like the three of them, I think they're a little bit more aligned. But, as he says, he's like, most people find me disagreeable after a certain amount of time, which you would get. He's a persnickety little guy. And I think she's like, but I find some warmth and humanity in him. So she calls him, and it's like, how sad is that you have to call your husband's partner that you barely know and he barely knows to like confide in. It just shows kind of how lost and broken you are, and the society you are is or inside of is so lost and broken.
As far as most indelible, do we really have to talk about it? What's in the box?
What's
Come
in
on.
the box?
No, I'm sloth. That's the part that just freaked me out. That's the part that I remembered the most.
Theoretically, that's indelible because it's never going to leave your mind. You'll remember that skeleton coming to life. Yeah,
I went with the scene that was the one that was the most memorable to me. Having not seen it in 30 years, 29 years.
You watched it with me a couple of years ago.
Okay, so I watched it again. But I mean, that's the scene that sticks with me.
I think what's so beautiful and effective about that scene is you're walking and you see all the air fresheners hanging. And you're like, what the hell is going on? And then they get closer and you see the bed, and then it's just all of them. The second they pull it back, none of them can interact in a normal way. And the John C. McGinley is like, oh, you got what you deserved. And it's like, nope, buddy, he's still alive. Like, no matter what somebody has done, it truly is, as the doctor says, like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen anyone be put through, ever, period.
All right, so that takes us to our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 253 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Per Madsen, 77. Swedish actor. Fanny and Alexander. Anita, Swedish nymphette. Bobby Hart, 86. American musician. The group Boysen Hart. A songwriter. Come a Bit Closer and Last Train to Clarksville. Sally Soxy, 82. American actress, Muscle Beach Party, The Trip, Wild in the Streets. Polly Holiday, 88, American actress. Alice, Gremlins, The Parent Trap. Ed Faulkner, 93, American actor. McClintock, Rio Lobo, The Green Berets. Patricia Crawley, 91, American actress. Please Don't Eat the Daisies, Forever Female, There's Always Tomorrow, and Key Witness. Marilyn Nolden, 99, American actress. Little Women, Imitation of Life. Les Miserables, A Woman Rebels, Showboat. Then a large one. Robert Redford, 89, American actor. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, and film director, Ordinary People, winning the Oscar for Best Director in 1980.
So I don't have a ton of personal development with most of the list this evening. I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to all of those that we lost, in addition to, I'm sure, the lengthy conversation we'll have here on Robert Redford. I'm not that familiar with some of the John Wayne films, but I know there's obviously a contingency that will definitely recognize Edward Faulkner.
Yes.
For most of us, at least my age, we're not going to necessarily know Polly Holiday in the way that you will, Dad, but in The Parent Trap, she's one of the camp counselors. I mean, it's a small throwaway bit, but it's at least there. And I'm sure that not many people necessarily know Marilyn Nolden, but she was in 6 different Best Picture nominees in the 30s and 40s as a child actor. So
that was pretty cool. I saw that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people on this list that are definitely worthy of recognition outside of the obvious big name at the end of this list. the golden boy himself, Robert Redford, which I'm sure we'll get to here in a second. But anything else on anybody at the top of this list here?
You can't be my age and not know where the phrase "kiss my grits" comes from. And it was the line that Polly Holiday used in the TV show Alice, which was very popular in the late 70s, early 80s. It was a hugely successful show on CBS. And she was one of the waitresses in there. And that was her catchphrase. If you go up to anybody my age and ask where the phrase "kiss my grits" comes from, everybody will go, "Oh, yeah, Alice." I would be shocked if 1 out of 10 people who's over 55 would not know that phrase.
Okay, so let's have the unfortunate conversation that I think we've been loath to have. It happened earlier this year when we lost Gene Hackman. It's going to inevitably happen more often. We kind of mentioned this earlier in the show, but all of the great film generation of the late 60s into the 70s, and definitely a part of the early to maybe mid 80s of directors, producers, editors, all of this will inevitably be gone here momentarily. We've had a lot of time with a lot of them. Peterson mentioned quite a few in that category before, and I think I added to the list as well: Dustin Hoffman, Robert Duvall, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro. Then you start thinking directors and you think Scorsese. Spielberg is not a spring chicken, but Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill. We've already lost a number of people from this era, but once we get to the point where a lot of these people, I mean, they're in their 70s and their 80s, and Morgan Freeman is among that class. I know that
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Well, Clint is up there.
95.
Jack Nicholson.
Mel Brooks.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman's basically in a wheelchair.
Oh, is he?
Michael Caine is in a wheelchair.
So I don't know. I mean, this is a tough conversation to necessarily have for all these people that have made such an impression on us. And you didn't even mention half of the films that I have listed here on the website, with The Sting, which
Yep.
we've covered back from
One of
season
my
1.
favorite movies.
Out of Africa, one of the other Best Picture winners that he was a part of. The Natural, to some, one of the great sports movies of all time. There's a period of time from about 1969 through about 1985 where he is one of the seminally known actors of his era. And I know this is going to be weird for you to hear, but I quite literally, when this popped up yesterday, and I recorded a little blurb ahead of our previous episode, which was on his directorial win for Ordinary People. But I had a classmate of mine who I think is roughly around my age, probably about the same age, who teaches kids in Northern Virginia. She legitimately asked me, she had no idea who Robert Redford was. Now, I continue to be unsurprised anymore by people who live more in the modern generation. And frankly, Robert Redford's last major film that like a lot of people had seen is probably the villainous role in Captain America Winter Soldier. But outside of that, he just had not been a staple for over 20 years of film. Anything that he did was very small. It was barely seen. I think the last one where he was like the lead in a movie was a film that you and I went to see in theaters not too long ago, The Old Man and the Gun, which we both really enjoyed.
Yes.
But he just has not nearly been in the public eye in the way that he was for probably a 15 to 20 year span. And before he really started a lot of his philanthropy work and his work with independent cinema and such, he's one of those people, though, that he was so ubiquitous to Hollywood and American culture, and everybody knew who he was for a good 20 years of time. He was just the epitome of what Hollywood was.
First film I ever went to see in the movie theater was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Good first movie. You know, I'm very sad of the passing of the actor Robert Redford, just because, you know, he's one of the most kind of charismatic and handsome men in history, just without a doubt. But I think what really distinguishes Redford from some of these guys, I love Nicholson. It's going to be very sad when he passes, but Redford was in one way, I think, came across as an incredibly decent person. He also started the Sundance Institute, which became an incubator for independent artists. Sundance today is very different than it was when it started, but I don't think you have the current landscape of independent and mainstream film the way it is today without it. Because think about every major studio. They're
all the major directors that got their start in independent cinema, whether you're talking about Soderbergh, Robert Rodriguez, Tarantino's one as well. I mean, Richard Linklater.
Yeah. All these guys came from that system, which is something that he championed and he wanted to be a part of. And then now if you're Disney and you're looking to hire your next Marvel director, you're looking at the Sundance films and saying, what's the one that's like the most mainstream, that has the most pop sensibility, that like you can take that and put it inside of like Ant-Man or whatever, or Captain Marvel. That was Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden. They had a Sundance movie in Half Nelson. That was their first film, and they made Captain Marvel. So, I think it's really difficult to even begin to explain or try to argue how much of an impact he had, not just on independent, but just film in general. And I think, he did a lot of good for film. And I think it's a monumental loss. And it's very heartening to me that he just passed away in his sleep. Hopefully it was nice, peaceful. And I think he led a full life. And I don't think, obviously I'm not saying he didn't have regrets and things he wanted to do differently, but he probably did about as much as you can do in life as a person could do. I think we could all dream to be so lucky. Obviously he was wealthy, but
and good looking helps as well.
Yeah. But thoughtful too. I think thoughtful and was very politically active. He was not just, let me sit on the sidelines. And yeah.
In many ways, he is the archetype of where a lot of different actors make their transition to whatever else. He's one of the first to make that transition from actor to director. He's also one of those, along to a degree with Paul Newman and then Jack Lemmon, of activist actors who really puts their name or lends their name to the political side of it as well.
One of the things I thought was really inspiring is apparently every year that Sundance opened, they did a round table, and Redford always appeared, and they videoed it. So he would tell a story about why he did Sundance and such. And he said one day he was in the area and a guy looked like a drifter, beat up old truck, dirty overalls. And he saw Redford and he stopped his truck, said, "Hey, could you look at this disc?" And he's like, the first thought of my mind is why am I bothering? I mean, why is he bothering me? And then he's like, you know what? I have a responsibility to this industry to kind of do this. All right. So I'm going to watch it. So he watched it and he said, this is really good. Would you like to enter it into this film festival? He says, well, I was hoping you would say that. And it was Ed Burns.
Brothers McMullen, he saw him on
yeah,
he was a PA, right?
Yep.
I think on a talk show or something. Yeah.
He said that's our responsibility. If you feel that you have made a success or have used this industry for your own personal advantage, you have a duty to give back to those coming up.
And obviously we're talking about him being very politically active as well. And I think given the temperature of our current moment, it's very heartening to look back at somebody like a Redford who was lowercase c conservative in the sense that he was respectful and had very outright and big opinions on politics, but did it respectfully and did it eloquently. And whether or not you side with him, which, you know, I do, you know, the stances he took were, you know, I could only be so lucky to be that artful and eloquent in the way I spoke about them. I think that's really important as well. Just looking back at how powerful the figure he was. You know, he could have been much more abrasive, but I think he believed in a full umbrella and get as many people under there as possible. And you know, it's a really tough loss, and you don't, you know, we always say it, but you don't ever think about how much these people mean to you until it happens.
And that's why I would say this is somewhat bittersweet in that he has not really been part of the public consciousness for a while now. But that being said, when someone passes, it's an opportunity, yes, to mourn them and feel some grief and some loss, but also to re-celebrate their work and what they were, and for some people maybe to even discover them for the first time. So I don't think that it is lost on me that all of that is there. However, last thing I'll say, because we're going to need to move on for the sake of time, of course, but all of us have seen the anecdote about him being potentially cast in The Graduate and wanting to be cast in The Graduate that has gone around. And have you ever struck out with a woman? The problem I have with that is I think I saw it 25 times from 25 different people. Come up with another anecdote. Yeah. Everybody did it yesterday. That it's just, the man lived a very full life, did a lot of things in life. There's more than one anecdote about him never striking out.
Just curious, and then we can probably move on. But I was curious, when you think about Redford, what do you think about first with Redford?
All the President's Men.
Okay.
That movie has such a correlation for me in classic cinema and growing up with that movie, because that was, some people grow up in like Shawshank and it's the remote drop. For my dad, All the President's Men was like an automatic remote drop. And so every time it was
as it
on,
should be.
Yeah. Every time it was on. And so it's one of those that I've probably seen more than, it's probably in my top 5 of movies I've seen so many times.
I saw the movie before I read the book. So, and the fact is that Bob Woodward was only in the process of starting to write the book, and he gets a call and he tells the story about how, you know, hi, this is Robert Redford. And he goes, yeah, sure. Who is this really? No, it's Robert Redford. I heard you're writing a book. He goes, well, yeah. He says, can I see it? He goes, it's in draft. He says, I'd like to see it. And so as he's writing or reading the pages of the book, he's already going through his mind as to how the script is going to look.
There are some people that say that's a little bit apocryphal, especially since he didn't end up writing the script itself, but okay.
No good story ever started with a thing called the truth, right?
And so we remember him here, as well as our other recognizees this evening, with a moment of silence in their collective honor. Thank you. All right, let's move to best funniest lines. My first one here, David Mills. Wait, I thought all you did was kill innocent people. John Doe. Innocent? Is that supposed to be funny? An obese man, a disgusting man who could barely stand up, a man who, if you saw him on the street, you'd point out to your friends so that they could join you in mocking him, a man who, if you saw him while you were eating, you wouldn't be able to finish your meal. After him, I picked the lawyer, and I know you both must have been secretly thanking me for that one. This is a man who dedicated his life to making money by lying with every breath that he could muster, to keeping murderers and rapists on the streets.
William Somerset. If we catch John Doe and he turns out to be the devil, I mean, he's Satan himself. That might live up to our expectations, but he's not the devil. He's just a man.
John Doe. Wanting people to listen, You can't just tap them on the shoulder anymore. You have to hit them with a sledgehammer, and then you'll notice you've got their strict attention.
Somerset. Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part.
David Mills. You're no messiah. You're a movie of the week. You're a fucking t-shirt at best.
David Mills. I've been trying to figure something in my head, and maybe you can help me out, yeah? When a person is insane, as you clearly are, do you know you're insane? Maybe you're just sitting around reading Guns and Ammo, masturbating in your own feces. Do you just stop and go, wow, this is amazing. How fucking crazy I really am. Yeah. Do you guys do that?
The table reads with Dana would be something unusual because you did it almost the exact opposite of how Pitt delivers that in the movie. Anyway, just moving on. David Mills. What's in the box?
David Mills. I don't think you're quitting because you believe these things you say. I don't. I think you want to believe them because you're quitting. You want me to agree with you. And you want me to say, yeah, you're right. It's all fucked up. It's a fucking mess. We should all go live in a fucking log cabin. But I won't. I won't say that. I don't agree with you. I don't. I do not. I can't.
I visited your house this morning after you left. I tried to play husband. I tried to taste the life of a simple man. It didn't work out. So I took a souvenir, her pretty head.
I guess it hasn't really struck me till this moment. Did he rape her first?
Wouldn't surprise me.
He quite literally says, I tried to taste the life of a simple man.
Well, I think he just means like sitting around having coffee, hanging out. He strikes me such an asexual character.
No, sex to him is violence. So rape would not be. He may be absolutely impotent, other than, he gets aroused when it's violent.
Maybe, yeah.
All right. I don't know. My last one, John Doe. Nothing wrong with a man taking pleasure in his work. I won't deny my own personal desire to turn each sin against the sinner.
William Somerset. It's impressive to see a man feeding off his emotions. And my last one is William Somerset. Even the most promising clues usually lead only to others.
Doe. Become vengeance, David. Become wrath. And Somerset. David, if you kill him, he will win.
All right. I think that exhausts us. So let's go to the Stanley rubric. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film roughly 5 years after it came out to today. So the year 2000 to today. What is the legacy of this film as shared between the audience and the industry? 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second here?
Second.
I think this is because we talked about the tale of this and being somewhat ahead of its time as far as the crime procedural, being somewhat involved in kind of the murder crime horror wave that was about to happen and some other things. I think this lives within the industry. But then you also take basically David Fincher's entire career is owed to this moment. Brad Pitt's serious acting career is more or less owed to this moment. Morgan Freeman being cast in everything from about 1995 through 2005, you could say is partly because of this movie, although I'm sure it has probably a little bit more to do with being on everybody's TV every Saturday on Shawshank. And so I'm going to go with a 4.5. Like, I think there's an argument for maybe even a 4. I think there's a definite argument for a 5, so I'm going to split a little bit of the difference there and go with a 4.5. As far as the audience, I don't know if, because we're a little bit further away, this is a movie that everybody knows or has heard of. I think it is a little bit sunk in, but this was only a film that had been seen by probably about a third of our office. And while I take that actually as a good sign that not even half the members of our office had necessarily seen it, but the fact that it even has that many among, frankly, our office is not a lot of movie watching people. So the fact that they saw this 90s movie is a little bit impressive to me. I don't know if it will be for my dad, who usually takes that as a bad sign. But for me, it was that there is something laid in. Now, we don't normally test this in our office group, but if I said the line, "What's in the box?" I think that's going to be even more instantly recognizable for people beyond this. And so it does have a level of pop cultural piercing. I'm trying to think of the right word to say to understand, like, it has some level of where it's sunk into the general pop culture, but I don't
Relevance.
think what?
Relevance.
Okay. Relevance might work there. I think it has some where people know it and have name recognition, but I don't think it's quite on the level where it's a film that everybody knows or everybody knows a particular moment from the film, unlike maybe a few of its contemporaries in the 90s. So I'm going to go with a 4 there. I have an 8.5.
I have, for the industry, I think you were right. I'm at a 4.5. Outside of the 5 years, I think this film has lost some luster in the public. It's not a film that another generation has migrated towards or looked at or watched. So I think it's kind of lost its luster. So I'm at a 3.5 for the public because I just don't see that it's had the staying power. It's not the same as some of the other films. It's not Shawshank. It's not, there's a whole host of those films that people go back to watch. And I don't think this is one of them. I think once you've seen it because of the twist, this is, unless you're really into this film and a real cinephile, that you're going to go back and rewatch. So I'm at a 3.5. So I'm at an 8 overall.
So when I think about the industry with this film, I think about all of the movies that come in its wake. And this is 5 years past, Saw's in what, 04, I want to say?
Yes.
I don't think Fincher obviously makes Alien 3.
Mm-hmm.
And if this doesn't work out for him, I don't think we see him pop back up. Maybe he does something small, but he comes up The Game, Panic Room, Fight Club, and then 12 years after this, I think makes the best film he's made since Seven, which is Zodiac. And I think you don't have Fincher's long tail career without this. You don't have the next 20 years of Morgan Freeman's career. You don't have the next really 30 years now of Pitt. And, Spacey, well, this was a weird moment where Spacey was hot. He'd just been in The Usual Suspects, Swimming with Sharks, The Ref, and this is kind of a capper. There's a reason why he doesn't have his name in the credits, which is like maybe the coolest thing Kevin Spacey ever did was to say, like, don't put my name in the credits because if The Ref happens or if Usual Suspects happens, you don't want my name being in there because they're going to know it's me. So I think the legacy for me is easy 5. I think the audience, Tom, you hit it on the head with kind of it being a movie that is popular, but maybe isn't quite as ubiquitous as it once was. I think if we're doing this 15 years ago, it's a 4 or a 5, or it's a 5 for the audience. I think we're at a 4 for the audience. I think good for a 9.
Well, thank you for the easy math then, because that averages out to an 8.5 between the three of us. I'm going to make impact and significance really quick for me because I'm only a half point different. Take all of my arguments for basically everything that I said for industry and plug it into the initial 5 years because it's basically the same type of thing. You have these genre offshoots because of the success of the film. David Fincher gets a new breath of life into his career and what he could become, and he makes several movies that are considered pretty good, including Fight Club, at least by some, not necessarily myself, but for those that enjoy it enough to put it on the Cinema Legacy poll at, I think it's 97th. I'm not looking at the list here, so don't quote me on that. But ultimately, my difference is that I move up a half point on the social impact because in the moment, the film twist, even though Peterson disagrees that it's a twist, but the ending and before like the internet and the rest of it, I think that was a significant moment in film culture. And ultimately, the word of mouth, the attention that it got, the promotion that it gave to recognizable stars such as Morgan Freeman being in every other movie because he knocked out multiple successful movies in a row. Brad Pitt becomes a bigger star, and it's partly because there's an audience attention to this movie, and the fact that it was the number one film primarily on the backing of a worldwide audience, because domestically, I think it was like the number 6 or 7 film that year. I give it a 4.5 there. I have a 9.
Well, I'll take it away. I'll say, for me, the only thing I would add to that, we just said, Tom, because I'm going to end up with a 9 with you, is that this movie gets nominated for, you said, Best Editing, correct? So it's an Academy Award nominee.
Yes.
And it's for, like, Most Desirable Male for Brad Pitt at the MTV Movie Awards. So we're traversing culture, my friend. We're talking the MTV Movie Popcorn Bucket Award to the Academy Award. So I think it spanned a good deal of the industry. So yeah, impact significance. Give me a 9.
Yeah, you should end at my number for that argument, because I think that is the first time anyone's brought up the MTV Movie Awards for anything on the show.
Well, I need to have a conversation with some other guests then, okay?
Okay, you do that. You have access to our private Discord community where you can talk to several of them. Dad, go ahead. Save him from himself.
All right. The fact that this was number 1 worldwide, 6 is not a small feat in the United States for a horror film. Budget of $35 million. I think it made $380 in the United States, if I remember.
Well, it wasn't limited to the United States. It was the worldwide number, and it was 327 million.
Okay. That's not a small number, especially at that time. So I'm going to say
it's 10 times its budget.
Yeah. I think realistically the public should be a 4.5. It wasn't perfect in the United States, but still, I think that it's justifiable. For the industry, I think in that 5-year period, it allowed Fincher to build his resume. I think it proved that Morgan Freeman could be a lead actor in a film and helped him move on. I think it also proved that Brad Pitt actually could act, even if he was eating again in this film and seemed to be eating in every fucking film he ever did afterwards.
He's a busy actor.
I don't know why he doesn't just become like the spokesperson for Doritos, because it seems like that's what he's eating every other scene. But anyway, so I'm at a 4.5, so I'm at a 9.
Great. So we all have 9s. That averages out to a 9.
Oh, I had 9 point, or yes, excuse me, I misspoke. 9, yes. So that averages out to 9. Okay.
Thank you for the math there.
Yes.
Now, we'll move to Novelty, which is covering the novelty of the movie as for its originality, or anything having to do with anything that could be original about the movie. Normally, it's about primarily the story and the subject material, or maybe something having to do with the themes of the movie, but it could be about other things too, techniques, camera work, the technical side of things, etc. Could be novel about this, or I guess original for that half of the category. The other half of the category is about execution. We take this category, split in half, 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Peterson, would you like to start here?
Love to. Yeah, I'm going to fall squarely at a 10. I think the originality of this thing is through the roof. It takes the framework of like the quote unquote buddy cop film and really upends it. It really is kind of the first movie where serial killing is like somewhat of an art, or like somebody thinks about it like more of an art form and like wants to say something. And Silence of the Lambs, which is the other prominent serial killer movie before this, is a a great film, but these aren't like artists per se. These are just guys who kill people. So I think that aspect is very unique. And then I think Fincher's telling and his direction is so pointed and specific. And truly, I think Andrew Kevin Walker's script takes no easy turns. So I think this is, for those two categories, easy 5 and 5 for a 10.
Dad, I'll go here just for a second, just to get some things down before you can go. I would say from a originality standpoint, this is borrowing a lot off of the Lethal Weapon series. Like the older, more seasoned cop, the younger, more renegade cop, and they're kind of, especially even in the race roles, it's kind of playing off of that. This movie is very different from that, but I think that the archetype and what we were expecting for somewhat of a procedural was built partly on that movie. Also, Law and Order had existed up to this point. We'd had other cop dramas, and this is a little bit of a procedural. Now, it's adding in some additional stuff that we hadn't seen before, and it does make its mark by being original and resetting the genre a little bit, but it's not like it's completely original to even give it a 5. I am a 4 on that side. And as far as execution, the individual parts I find to be really appealing. Morgan Freeman is really good in this. I think for the most part, Brad Pitt is good in here, but I wouldn't say that he's perfect. I really like Gwyneth Paltrow. And everybody else in the movie seems to do a really good acting job. I really have nothing to complain about with the script. I think it's fairly top notch. But this to me is like an early version of a director who would perfect his craft a little bit later on and would learn some techniques that I find that might have been a little bit more engaging. This is a little bit more raw, and frankly, it adds to the ambiance of the film, but I don't find it to be a perfect film. I find it to be a very good film made by a slightly inexperienced director who, while he had a visual style and would go on to later do other things, to me, yet he hadn't quite found his full voice, even though I think this may be his best movie. Overall, I'm at a 4 there. I have an 8.
Originality. This is the Maltese Falcon meets the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is the perception of a film noir as a horror film. So it took two very distinct genres and mashed them up. This is fusion cooking. And it's very original and unique, but elements are not. So I can't give it a full 5 for originality. The debate was between a 4 or a 4.5. I've convinced myself by my comments, 4.5. Execution. Your point, Tom, you made reminds me of The Man Who Knew Too Much, the British version, which is an excellent film by Hitchcock, and The Man Who Knew Too Much, the American version in the 50s by Hitchcock. Different because the director had more skill and knowledge than he did the first time around. And I agree with your point there. So from an execution standpoint, I'm at a 4.5. So I am at a 9.
Which is great, because that means it averages out to a 9.
We're crushing the math for you tonight, Tom.
Oh, I'm loving it. No decimal points, really. Oh, now we get to classicness, where it's just going to be all decimal points. But okay. Classicness is usually about how well or not the film has aged. Let's think Kevin Spacey here. It's not like he's going to come up in this discussion at all.
Well, he is creepy. So if you believe everything that was said, even though he was acquitted or everything was handled, but
we'll get there, Dad. We also factor in the timelessness of the film, given that it's especially kind of our benchmark for this has been about 25 years. This is now 30. Kind of has this ability that it could be released at multiple points in time and still have poignancy. We obviously led off the show tonight with its prescience to the current state of affairs in the United States. and I guess in multiple other countries where political violence is much more prevalent, or that authoritarianism and, attention-seeking killings are becoming a little bit more of a thing. I will say that on Classicness, a serial killer trying to get attention on the perceived sins of society or corruption makes increasingly big shows of his crimes to make a larger point where the police are clearly overmatched. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
I think this film is ahead of its time. I think its subject material is aging fairly well. In fact, I would say that this is probably the one film where having Kevin Spacey in it in that particular role actually might help it, because for the crowd out there that don't think he's acting and that is just kind of like predatory, this is that film. But I will take off a slight like half step or half point down for how big are libraries as a character and plot in this movie. And when was the last time anybody that's probably in this listening audience, other than Andrew, who apparently lives there, go to the fucking library?
So I'll say this about the library is I think because the library I go to in my hometown, or like where I live in Marietta, Georgia, it's like it doesn't look like that. It's like a carpeted. It's looks like a boring, like very banal place. This library is like a work of art. And the reason I think it's important, the library, is that that's where Somerset goes. He is our weird little guy who does that kind of stuff. You're not going to catch the Pitt character there.
All I'm saying is that even if you want to make all of the rest of these points, in the fact that they have to go through Rolodexes and look through specific books instead of just Googling stuff that's probably in the public domain, like Inferno or the Divine Comedy or the Canterbury Tales, like you can find all of this stuff pretty easily anymore, and yet they're having to go physically look at it, let alone the fact that they find the guy by searching the database for how often somebody checked out a book. And it's all analog shit. That's just like, it's a plot point that doesn't age well because that stuff really hasn't been prevalent or existed since about 1995.
Now, I will say, though, the part that has aged well is using somebody's information against them.
Yes.
Their private information against them.
But ultimately, I'm going to land at a 9 here.
Tough to argue that.
See, I think that a large portion of the investigation and how they came across would not have been able or could not be done today. It would be a much different story. They would have to change so much. So I'm kind of having trouble getting to your 9. I also have to give at least a point down or a half point down for Spacey, even though, again, he is such a controversial subject because, he's never been convicted of anything. He's never been actually having a lawsuit found against him. So it's so hard. The best I can do is an 8 coming up from our 6.
Again, with the Spacey of it all, even if you want to acquit him in the court system and the legal version of that, which to this point he pretty much, if not has outright been, more or less has been.
2 criminal charges dismissed, 1 civil charge dismissed.
I still think, going back to my point that I made on The Usual Suspects, my biggest issue is that he got himself into situations and made a ton of bad PR moves and now has become this victimhood that I don't find to be particularly charismatic or becoming of somebody who is in the public eye and made their life based on the public eye and feels next to no remorse or anything else for, even putting yourself close to these situations. You would think, I've made some mistakes. I've learned some stuff. Those are the people we're willing to give second shots to, and he just doesn't feel like that to me, which is why you can be a little bit more dismissive of him as a public figure, even if he has been acquitted.
Yeah, the Spacey of it all, man. Because when you talk about that, you know, Morgan Freeman was Me Too'd. He had people come after him. Brad Pitt obviously has his own bundle of controversies.
Yeah, that's...
Kevin Spacey obviously is a walking controversy at this point.
We probably should have spent longer. I mean, I know we've now mentioned it multiple times, like Kevin Spacey and whatnot, but Brad Pitt's got a lot of skeletons too.
Yeah, and this is not to discount any of that information, but I think it is very easy when you're watching something like Seven to just kind of disappear into it. And, you know, like Kevin Spacey, he's a weird little freak in the movie. He's a weird little freak in life. And maybe it informed the performance a little bit. I'm not quite sure there, but I am able to leave that at the door, I think. I really, you know, Spacey's a guy, and I think he's a very effective actor when he's in the right material, and then you put him in the wrong thing, and I think he's disastrous. I think he's perfectly cast in this movie, not just because he's, you know, creepy in real life. I just think he understands what the character needs. Brad Pitt, I think, is a perfect movie star in this. Like, he is a perfect movie star performance. I don't think he's giving the greatest performance in history, but I think he's perfect what he's doing and what he's asked to do. So if I, you know, for me, if we start bringing in things like Me Too or people in their past crimes and sins, you know, there's not a movie out there that you can watch, right? Every movie has somebody in some capacity. So to me, the real offenders, and I've said this on this podcast before, but like, I can't watch Woody Allen movies anymore. And the reason is because when I'm watching a Woody Allen movie, one, he might be the lead actor. And two, he is so inextricably linked with his characters and his dialogue. And it's very difficult to separate yourself, the man and the artist, from the material. I think it is much easier with something like Seven. So I'm going to fall right with you, Tom, at a 9. I think this movie is aged exceptionally well. The one use of a kind of a derogatory term, and when Pitt uses the F word when he's reading, I can't remember if it was Chaucer or Dante, but he's reading one of the two, the Cliff Notes. Oh, no, it's before he gets Cliff Notes, but he uses a slur, and it's not about the slur, it's about understanding that character. And he is a simple-minded, you know, I don't think Pitt's dumb in the movie, but I do think he is uncurious or not curious. And I think that is partly why the movie works so well, is there's curiosity and an uncurious person together. So I think the movie's aged exceptionally well. And the small couple infractions on it, I think I can kind of overlook. So I'm going to land it at 9.
So that's an 8.67 between the three of us. Let's move to rewatchability. This is the most subjective category. Everybody has kind of their own test. I'll leave myself till the end if somebody else would like to go first.
Do you want to go, Peterson, or?
I can go. Yeah, I'll go first, Tom, because this is a really easy question for me to answer. This is probably in the top 10 movies I've seen of all time. I've seen this movie so many times, whether it be a Saturday, Sunday afternoon in the house I grew up in, or just watching it, you know, randomly where I live now. I've seen this thing at least 20 times. I think it's an easy 10. Weird to say for a movie that is this bleak, nihilistic, but I think it just, something about it feels comforting, even as it's so harsh. So easy 10 for me.
I'll go next. I think I've mentioned this before, but my life has been in law. I did criminal defense. I have spent the last several decades in Social Security disability, dealing with the most sick and destitute people in society. I have a hard time finding comfort and relaxation in bleak, dark movies. I just have a difficult time as rewatchability when they're like these. I'm not saying it's a bad film. I'm just, again, it's a very personal, subjective statement. I've seen this thing now, I believe, 3 times. If I never see it again, okay, I'm fine with that. I know the film. I understand its artistic wonder and appreciation of what it did, and I can enjoy it, but it's not going to be what I turn on when I'm sitting home on a Friday night and I just want to not think about how shitty the world is. And so I'm at a 4.5 because I can't even say that I would sit and watch it if somebody else wanted to watch it. It's going to a lot depend on the mood I'm in at that particular day. And most of the time, by the weekends, I'm just spent. I've had to fight a lot of bullshit and not what I'm going to go to.
It's tough to argue that, Dana. I get it.
Okay, as far as for me on this particular category, I've taken more of the attempting to be more objective route for rewatchability this season, just on the standpoint that I don't think we may have rounded everything when we went to the more subjective side of things, away from kind of our early strategy of trying to make this a little bit more objective in this category, and represented kind of the rough public voice a little bit on this as much. And so with the public's general, I would say, predilection toward some of these movies. I mean, again, this is the number one worldwide movie of 1995. We have how many different detective stories, true crime stories, horror stories that are fairly popular these days, even though they're not necessarily my thing. I think there is a significant audience that this tapped into and has continued to tap into that would be very receptive to something like this. And since this, in some ways, helped kick off a lot of the stuff that would eventually be coming down the pike, or that would spin off from it, or led to the next set of things, whether it's Zodiac and then the true crime boom or whatever, I think that this movie would be objectively popular if it's reintroduced into theaters again or something to that effect. And so I think I'm going to give this a strong 8. So that brings us to a 7.5 average between the three of us. For audience score on this one, we had a 91% for Google users and a 95% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 9.3. So to repeat the categories, we had an 8.5 for Legacy, a 9 for Impact and Significance, a 9 for Novelty, an 8.67 for Classicness, a 7.5 for Rewatchability, and a 9.3 for Audience Score, giving us a final total of 51.97, and currently placing it on our list at number 34.01 spots ahead of Die Hard and just behind Apocalypse Now, which is tied with The Silence of the Lambs as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Now, mind you, Fight Club is at 155. So I think we did our job here.
Yeah.
Everybody good? We can go home?
Yep, we can.
All right. Now, if anyone, Andrew, thinks we did a bad job on this or has any commentary for us, you can certainly write us at greatestoutsidemoviepodcast@gmail.com. Find us on any of our socials at GMOAT Podcast, or write us at RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMOAT Podcast.
Or bitch at us in the Discord.
Doesn't take much.
Yeah, I know.
All right, moving on. Remaining questions for this one quickly. What happens to Mills?
He spends a couple of years in a psych ward.
Yeah. I would think he's going to definitely take the insanity defense.
Of course.
I was wondering if, because he's a cop, he would just kind of get, I don't know, like badge taken away, can't ever be a cop again. But
it is 1995. It was not uncommon for them to just go, well, here's your badge and gun. Go back out on the street.
That is true, but I think you'd have I don't see him taking just a suspension and them putting him back out there. He's going to be so... It's not even like I shot a kid or something where that might really fuck you up. It's his wife's head was in a box. Like...
Yeah, I think he's definitely arrested, and I think he will go through a trial, but I don't think he's ever going to spend any time in jail.
No. God, no.
I think he will... I honestly, I'd be interested to see the movie that happens a year from now and just him like reacclimating into society and what that'd be like. So I think
that would be the sequel.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting sequel and him just trying to be part of this world.
All I'll say is there was a suggested sequel on a spec script that did eventually get made and was like a fart in the wind type movie that was a complete flop. Basically like almost a straight to streaming home DVD type of situation. But at the time, you can see Fincher's direct comment on whether or not he wanted to make a sequel and how little interest he ever had in revisiting any of his work. It is a descriptive comment on the Wikipedia, to say the least.
Yes. But quite frankly, I could see a psychological thriller of, Brad Pitt starring in a film at this point in his career where he's trying to live or come to terms with his life, which is a shambles of alcohol and drug abuse and everything else, and trying to find something positive 30 years after this horrendous circumstance, and it being a really good film.
Next question. How long does Somerset stay a cop?
2 minutes.
I think he's done. I think after this, he's like, I'm calling it quits. Because I think this is a moment where, without a doubt, the question that he is asking himself the entire movie, has what I've done made any difference in the world? And now it's definitively a no. Because the one time he can potentially save the Mills character, he can't even do it. So I think he's done. There's nothing he has to offer. He says he's going to go live on a farm. That guy's not living on a farm. That guy's...
Well, that's what I mean. This is the only thing that he really has left.
Hold on. He has the metronome.
That he smashed?
He destroyed it.
We don't know if it's broken.
He threw it broke into a million pieces.
He loved that metronome.
Anyway, I don't know. I've always gotten the impression that he stays on longer after this movie.
And I can see him going out to a farm, sitting and reading poetry and reading all these weird books and making trips to a local library. Yeah.
Yeah, he would definitely be a Pablo Neruda type of fan.
Just honestly, hearing Somerset talking about like wanting to go live on a farm, like that sounds so fucking nice right now. Just put me on a farm, not close to anything. Just let me be.
All right, final question here. Why do you think Mills wanted to come to whatever unnamed city this is? It never actually specifically says. We're focusing on it early in the movie. He specifically pushed to come to this city and be in this unit. Why?
It's the same reason why successful coaches at one school move to a bigger program in college football, for example. It's because you want to challenge yourself. You want to see how good you really can be. It's the reason why, as a lawyer, I decided to do appellate work, because I wanted to see if I was good enough to play with the big boys.
So Nick Saban finally retired so he could challenge himself by doing television and being really good at it?
No, Nick Saban already challenged himself. He reached the pinnacle and he retired because he was bored and because,
Exactly. He retired because he's bored and he needed a new challenge, so he did television.
Look, let him spend his Sunday afternoons and Saturday afternoons with Miss Terry. Okay.
I have no problem with it.
No, I think he comes because he thinks he can make a difference, like truly make a difference, and that's what he says in the beginning, and I truly believe it. Like I think that bar scene between him and Somerset, when Somerset's like, if he's the devil, like that might meet our expectations, but he's not. He's a man. And Pitt like really tries to like convince him, like, you're leaving because like he didn't buy any of it. And I think that's him trying to sell himself that he didn't buy it. I think that he really is struggling with, I think, what this city is now offering. But I don't think he thinks it's going to be a better life. I just think he's thinking, I can make a difference. Maybe what I'm doing is can be the difference. And that is what brings me back to that Ed, Tom Bell and No Country for Old Men. You know, it's the idea of the fire always being up ahead and you want to chase it and chase it and chase it. And then it's gone. It's not there because you can't ever make a true difference when things are this bleak and that bad on an individual level. You need it done on a macro level. And unfortunately, you're not going to be somebody who's changing things on a macro level when you're a detective.
So I want to thank our guest Peterson for being back with us yet again for his 11th time. It is 11 now that we've officially counted. You will be back with us again in 2 weeks to discuss Stanley Kubrick's forgotten classic Spartacus, starring Kirk Douglas. But until then, go ahead and tell the people again what you're working on and where they can find you.
Of course, check me out at War Starts at Midnight, our back catalog there. And actually with a new Paul Thomas Anderson film coming out in when this comes out, a couple
9
of days, right?
Well, when it comes out, it'll be like 2 days away. Yes.
Jesus. I'm like pulsating with how excited I am.
Has it excited your oeuvre?
My oeuvre is going strong, baby. But for those who know, War Starts at Midnight, we've got our Magnificent Anderson series. So we ping pong or tennis between Paul Thomas Anderson and Wes Anderson. And I am the Paul Thomas Anderson head on the podcast. I'm maybe my favorite director. So very excited to see what he does one battle after another. But go back and check all of our conversations on Blood, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love. And then here, catch me here.
No wonder if you're the Paul Thomas Anderson head that you're pulsating.
Pulsating?
Oh, there you go. Dad, I will try and make the remaining thoughts on this relatively quick since we're well over what I wanted to be for this week, given the projects and other things that I have going on. But anyway, the point is that now that our 1982 performance is in the books and we've got this CLP poll rolling, when are we finishing the James Bond catalog?
Yeah, I know. I'm further along in it than you are.
Where are you at?
I am in full. I just started the last of the
Sean Connery?
No.
Timothy Dalton?
He's meaning Pierce Brosnan.
Pierce Brosnan films. So
you already got through Tomorrow
Never
Dies and The World Is Not Enough. You're going to the Abomination Die Another Day.
Yes, which I have actually seen with you because you decided that I needed to see this horrible film. And so I watched and I remember
the stupidest twist in a Bond film ever.
Yeah.
Well, I will say Pierce was a real gentleman on set. He saved Halle Berry's life.
Great. How the villain went from a North Korean prince to a white British aristocracy. I have no
Hold on, is
fucking
that-
idea.
Is that what? I haven't seen this in theaters. Is that really?
Yes!
Is that really what happens?
Yes.
Yes.
I remember him leaving like a North Korean prison in the opening scene.
Okay,
And I was
he's
like, why
leaving.
is this so dark?
He
And
is.
then the rest of the movie's so dumb.
He is leaving a North Korean prison, and a bomb or a mine explodes in this guy's face, and then he has plastic surgery to be a white dude. That's the plot of the movie.
The guy playing another guy.
Anyway, I have to imagine that will be upcoming in the near future. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have to rewatch yet all of the Pierce Brosnans, and frankly, the Daniel Craig ones will be easy to plow through once I get to that point. But yep, we still got I've still got 9, and you've still got 6 to go.
Yes,
Doesn't
I know.
he surf and die another day?
I know.
Does he surf?
Yes.
And work and all the rest of that. And actually, I have an idea that I have not talked with you about, but I'm going to tease because it's something I will do and announce on the show here in the next few weeks, leading towards the end of the year.
Well, that's a tease there for you.
Yes.
But all right. I think that'll do it for us then this week. Thank you for listening. They say once you grow crops somewhere, you have officially colonized it. So technically, I colonized Mars. Next week for our 281st episode, we welcome back Braden Ganter to discuss The Martian from 2015, celebrating its 10th anniversary. Directed by Ridley Scott, written by Drew Goddard. Cinematography by Darius Walski. Music by Harry Gregson Williams, starring Matt Damon, Jessica Chastain, Kristen Wiig, Jeff Daniels, Michael Pena, Kate Mara, Sean Bean, Sebastian Stan, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle at GMOAT Podcast. Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.